But she was, they saw her body. She didn't just die in a tub, like she was being. Uptown Records started with 5 people. Andre Harrell, I'll Be Sure, Heavy D, and Puffy. And Kim is dead. Heavy D is dead. Andre Harrell is dead. The only 2 left are Puffy and Al almost died. Heavy D was found dead, face down in the heart attack. Andre Harrell, heart attack. Kim died from pneumonia, but there's the first coroner's report that said that she died. It was ruled a homicide, and they found toxins in her body to prove that she had been poisoned. You know, they have poisons that create heart attack and pneumonia likes. What they all had in common, though, the survivors and the late of Uptown Records, they were all writing tell-all books. Andre was writing a book right before he died. Heavy D was working on a book before he died. Kim Porter was working on a book before she died. And I'll Be Sure was working on the documentary of his life. And then he goes into a coma.
Why did you let the party go on?
Of course, this is a personal thing. But the Grammys were the next night. You don't cancel. You turn an evening into a tribute.
You did a magnificent evening.
Into...
Did you give a thought to canceling?
Never.
You never thought?
Never.
Did you ever think...
And the family did not want me to give a thought. No.
Whitney Houston didn't just die in a bathtub, and people are finally starting to say it out loud. Cassie's bombshell testimony in Diddy's federal trial has cracked open one of music's darkest mysteries, and now, all eyes are on Clive Davis. The whispers that Clive and Diddy were tied to Whitney's shocking death have haunted fans for over a decade. But now those whispers are turning into accusations, and receipts are surfacing that could change everything. From drug-fueled parties to secret orders and an alleged industry cover-up. The truth is uglier than anyone imagined. And Cassie? She may have just lit the match that burns it all down. It started with one name, Whitney. In a courtroom packed with lawyers, reporters, and Diddy's legal dream team, it wasn't just Cassie Ventura's testimony that rattled the walls. It was her mention of Whitney Houston. And just like that, decades of hushed suspicions and late-night whispers erupted into full-blown shockwaves across the internet. What does Whitney have to do with a case centered on abuse, trafficking, and the downfall of Sean Diddy Combs? Apparently, a lot more than anyone was ready to admit. Cassie's testimony was already explosive. She detailed years of psychological torment, physical abuse, and being trafficked to powerful men, allegations that have left Diddy's reputation in freefall. But then came a moment that stopped everything. Cassie, under oath, mentioned Whitney's name, not in passing, not as a coincidence, but with intent. The courtroom tensed. The press gallery lit up. Social media lost its mind. And the most chilling part? It wasn't Cassie's words that confirmed the suspicion. It was Diddy's own lawyer. When he rushed to address the Whitney connection, to distance Diddy from her tragic 2012 death, he did the exact opposite. His rebuttal raised more eyebrows than it settled. Why even bring her death up unless there's something to hide? The statement came off like damage control, preemptive and overly defensive. Immediately, timelines flooded with old interviews, grainy photos, and eerie footage of Whitney in her final years. People started revisiting those conspiracy theories, the ones that used to live in the shadows of message boards and YouTube rabbit holes. Suddenly, Whitney's tumultuous final days didn't look so isolated. They looked like part of a pattern, a bigger, darker network. Now, with Cassie's bombshell and Diddy's legal team fumbling for cover, one thing's for certain. Whitney's name has re-entered the spotlight, not as a fading legend, but as a potential key to unraveling something massive. And what if her tragic end wasn't just about drugs and heartbreak, but about what and who she knew? The internet wants answers. And this time, They're not letting go. It was February 2012, the weekend the music world stopped. Whitney Houston was found dead in a Beverly Hilton bathtub, just hours before Clive Davis's infamous pre-Grammy party was set to begin in the same hotel, just floors above her lifeless body. At the time, her death was blamed on heart disease and cocaine, a tragic end to a life long marred by addiction. But more than a decade later, Cassie's sworn testimony has ripped the lid off what might really have been going on behind closed doors that weekend. Because according to Cassie, Diddy also overdosed that same weekend. And not just anywhere. He was right there in Los Angeles, partying, drugging, and spiraling out behind the scenes of the glitzy Grammy festivities. In the shadows of the same world Whitney had just been erased from. According to legal documents and eyewitness accounts, Cassie says she was the one who had to revive him, watching him go limp after binging on powder and pills, a lethal mix Whitney herself had been using before her death. The similarities are jarring. Both Whitney and Diddy were allegedly consuming cocktails of prescription meds and cocaine. Both were surrounded by enablers, insulated from reality by money, yes men, and industry handlers. And both were in close orbit to Clive Davis, the man who had built their careers and who, oddly, decided to go ahead with his party even as Whitney's body lay cold and unattended just a few floors away. But here's the part that hits different now. While Whitney died alone in a bathtub, Diddy survived, revived by Cassie, who'd become more caretaker than girlfriend. She paints a picture of a life full of freak-offs, heavy drug use, endless parties, and unrelenting emotional chaos. She wasn't just his partner. She was trapped, controlled, drugged up just enough to keep her compliant, but not so far gone that she couldn't clean up his messes. And that weekend, that wasn't an isolated incident. It was a glimpse into a cycle, one that Cassie lived in daily. Whitney may have been a cautionary tale to the public, but to Cassie, she was a reflection, a woman pulled under by the same forces, same handlers, same toxic web of power and silence. So when Cassie says Diddy overdosed the same weekend Whitney died, it's not just a footnote. It's a warning, a signal that maybe what happened to Whitney wasn't just destiny or addiction. It was the consequence of being too close to the wrong people at the wrong time. And this time, someone lived to talk about it. If you want to understand how Diddy became untouchable, you have to start with the man behind the curtain, Clive Davis. To the world, he's the legendary music mogul who discovered icons, broke barriers, and built empires. But behind that polished legacy is a trail of whispered favors, protected secrets, and strategic power plays. And Diddy's rise might be Clive's most carefully curated project of all. Let's rewind to the early 90s. Diddy, just a brash young intern at Uptown Records, was making waves for his sharp instincts and lavish taste. He could spot a hit from a mile away. But after orchestrating a concert at City College of New York that ended in tragedy, 9 young people dead, dozens injured in a stampede, most industry executives would have cut ties and moved on. Andre Harrell, the head of Uptown, did exactly that. Diddy was fired, but not Clive Davis. No, Clive saw something in Diddy. And more importantly, Clive had the power to make the world forget. Instead of letting the scandal ruin Diddy, Clive quietly backed him, even helping facilitate the launch of Bad Boy Records under Arista, the label Clive ran. In the aftermath of death and lawsuits, Diddy was gifted a second chance, and this time with Clive's industry machine behind him. That partnership wasn't just business, it was personal. Deeply so. Industry insiders have whispered for years about the closeness between Clive and Diddy, a relationship that often blurred lines between mentorship and something deeper. Some claim it was an open secret, something everyone in the inner circle knew but never dared say aloud. The favors, the loyalty, the protection. When Diddy was in trouble, Clive made the calls. When the image needed scrubbing, Clive handled the media. And when allegations swirled, Clive's name never came up, not once. But now, as Diddy's empire crumbles and old secrets surface, the Clive connection is under a microscope. Why did Clive continue to elevate Diddy after the deaths, the lawsuits, the whispers? Why did he keep placing Diddy and the artists under him at the center of every Grammy weekend, every tribute, every stage? Was Clive Davis just a genius label head who believed in raw talent? Or was he something far more calculated? A puppet master, pulling strings, laundering reputations, and building icons not out of merit, but out of control? Because when you look at the timeline, the City College tragedy, the rise of Bad Boy, the silence around every scandal, one thing becomes clear: Diddy didn't rise alone. He was lifted, groomed, shielded, and Clive Davis might have been the one holding the umbrella. Now, with Cassie's testimony cracking the foundation, people are finally asking, was Clive Davis just watching the empire fall, or was he part of building it brick by brick? Let's talk about the bodies. Because at a certain point, coincidence stops being random and starts looking like a pattern. And when it comes to Sean Diddy Combs, too many people close to him have ended up dead, silenced, or mysteriously incapacitated right when they were about to speak out. Start with Kim Porter, Diddy's longtime partner, the mother of 3 of his children, a woman who knew where the skeletons were buried because she allegedly helped him hide some of them. In 2018, Kim was reportedly working on a tell-all book detailing her years with Diddy, the abuse she endured, and the secret she swore she'd never take to her grave. But then, just weeks after catching what seemed like a basic flu, she was dead at 47. The official cause? Lobar pneumonia. But those closest to her, especially her ex, I'll be sure, said that didn't add up. I'll be sure, publicly claimed Kim was murdered. He said she told him directly she was afraid for her life, and not just of Diddy, but of the people he kept around him. People with reach. People who clean up messes. And then, just months after making those claims, I'll be sure, slipped into a coma. For 2 months. No explanation. No warning. He woke up confused and disoriented, and while he hasn't spoken much since, some say he got the message loud and clear. Stay quiet, or you'll be next. Now, let's look at Heavy D, one of hip-hop's most beloved figures. He was reportedly in talks to write a memoir detailing the early days of Uptown Records, Diddy's origin story. Heavy D had a front-row seat to Diddy's rise, from intern to mogul. But before the book could materialize, Heavy suddenly died in 2011. Another case of pneumonia, or so they said. His health issues were vague. No real red flags. Until he collapsed and never got up. Then came Andre Harrell, Diddy's original boss, mentor, and the man who gave him his first big break at Uptown. Andre knew the real story. The lawsuits, the cover-ups, the chaos behind the scenes. And once again, when whispers began surfacing that Andre was shopping around a book or possibly a documentary detailing the inner workings of the 90s music industry, he died suddenly at 59. No warning. No public health issues. Just gone. So let's tally it up. Kim Porter, Andre Harrell, Heavy D, all connected. All allegedly working on projects that could have exposed Diddy. All dead. And Al B, sure, who tried to speak up for Kim, was put into a coma under circumstances that have never been fully explained. And then there's Jaguar Wright, the music industry whistleblower who's been screaming into the void for years. She said repeatedly that there's a curse, a deadly pattern that follows people who try to expose Diddy. According to her, you don't cross him and live to tell the story. Everybody that gets close enough to tell the truth ends up dead, she warned in a now viral clip. And people laughed at her until they started checking the receipts. Because when too many people die with too many secrets at just the wrong time, that's not paranoia. That's a pattern. And if Cassie's lawsuit was the match, then these deaths might be the trail of gasoline leading straight to the truth. If Cassie's lawsuit cracked the foundation of Diddy's empire, then Rodney, Lil Rod, Jones's case might just burn it to the ground. Because this isn't just about abuse or harassment anymore. This is about organized crime. The kind of activity that doesn't just ruin careers, it buries people. And the receipts? They're in black and white, spelled out in a 73-page federal complaint that reads more like a mob takedown than a music industry dispute. Lil Rod wasn't just some studio lackey. He was Diddy's personal producer, working closely with him for over a year. And what he claims to have seen during that time would make even the most seasoned FBI agent sweat. According to the lawsuit, Diddy didn't just abuse power. He bragged about wielding it like a weapon. The kind of power that came with access to corrupt law enforcement, the ability to make witnesses disappear, and even tamper with juries if things ever went south. Let that sink in. Juror tampering. Lil Rod says Diddy was so confident in his untouchability, he openly discussed having connections that could rig a courtroom if needed. He also claims Diddy bragged about ordering hits, yes, murder, and that those in his circle knew what happened when someone crossed him. This wasn't whispered gossip. This was Diddy allegedly boasting about how he moved like a boss, not a music boss, but a crime boss. And this is where things get even darker. Because if Lil Rod is telling the truth, then Whitney Houston's death might not have been just a tragic accident. It might have been part of the same long-standing pattern of silencing threats, permanently. See, Whitney wasn't just an icon. She was part of Clive Davis's inner circle. The same Clive who protected Diddy for decades. The same Clive who allegedly knew all the secrets and made sure they stayed buried. And when Whitney started spiraling publicly, when she became a liability, when the drugs and erratic behavior threatened the brand, people close to her claimed she wanted out. She wanted to speak. She wanted to tell the truth. And then, just like Kim Porter, just like Andre Harrell, Whitney ended up dead under suspicious circumstances, drowned in a bathtub with drugs in her system, surrounded by whispers of what she knew and who she might have exposed. What's even more chilling, she died the night before Clive Davis's annual pre-Grammy party, held in the same hotel. And the show? It went on. Her body wasn't even cold, and the music industry was already toasting champagne downstairs. Now pair that with Lil Rod's claims. Asterisk that Diddy moves like a Don, that he's shielded by dirty cops, that he knows how to clean things up. And suddenly, Whitney's death doesn't feel so isolated. It feels like part of a system. A violent, calculated system built not just on power, but on fear, silence, and elimination. The lawsuit is still unfolding. But if even half of what Lil Rod says is true, then this isn't just about Diddy anymore. It's about a criminal enterprise that's been operating under the guise of glitz and Grammys, with bodies piling up behind the platinum plaques. And the only question now is, how many more secrets were buried with the people who try to tell the truth? The days leading up to Whitney Houston's death weren't just chaotic, they were disturbing. Frantic, like a woman being watched, like someone trying to escape. It started with a meeting. Whitney met with Clive Davis, the man who discovered her, managed her, protected her, and allegedly controlled her. According to industry insiders, this wasn't a warm reunion. This was business. And Whitney didn't like what was being asked of her. There were rumors that Clive wanted her to relaunch, to return to the spotlight and salvage what was left of her reputation. But Whitney, she wanted out of the contracts, out of the deals, out of the cage. After that meeting, something changed. Witnesses say she was agitated, erratic, pacing the Beverly Hilton like a woman unraveling. She crashed Brandy and Monica's rehearsal, shouting unintelligibly, sweaty and disoriented. She walked barefoot through the hotel lobby with scratches on her arms and blood dripping down her leg. In one moment, she was laughing uncontrollably. In the next, she was picking fights. And then she vanished into her room. Suite 434. That was February 9th, 2012. 2 days before she died. On the 10th, she was spotted again. Still manic, still paranoid. She told friends someone was trying to hurt her. She kept saying she needed to get out of LA, that she was scared. And that night, hotel staff claimed she blasted gospel music through her room like it was a prayer or a warning. And then came February 11th, the day of Clive Davis's annual pre-Grammy Gala. The guest list was elite. Beyoncé, Alicia Keys, Diddy, industry titans. The show was set to go on, but upstairs, Whitney was already dead. She was found face down in her bathtub, her wig floating beside her, prescription bottles lining the counter, and a bloody purge from her nose. Her assistant had left the room briefly. By the time she returned, it was too late. The call went out. Security was notified. So was Clive. He was told Whitney Houston, his greatest discovery, was gone. And yet, the party continued. Downstairs, people were drinking, posing for photos, clinking champagne glasses, while Whitney's lifeless body was still upstairs. Hours passed. Her corpse still in the suite. Music blaring below. The optics were horrifying. How do you celebrate a legacy while her body lies upstairs in a bathtub? How do you spin that? Unless the machine was already running and there was too much money, too much image control, too many reputations to protect. Because in that room, Whitney Houston was no longer a person. She was product, a brand, a memory being managed in real time. They said it was drugs, accidental, tragic, but everything about her final days, the manic behavior, the sudden fear, the meeting with Clive, the way no one paused the party even after she died, suggests something much darker. Whitney told people she was afraid. She said someone was after her. And when she died, the industry's response wasn't shock. It was choreography. And maybe that's the real tragedy. Not just that she died, but that whatever truth she carried died with her. Cassie may have settled, but her war was only the beginning. Because now, she's got leverage, real leverage. The kind that doesn't disappear with a non-disclosure agreement or a wire transfer. The kind that other alleged victims, whistleblowers, and former insiders are watching closely. And it all leads to one chilling legal reality. There is no statute of limitations on murder. Let that sink in. The civil suit cracked open a vault of buried secrets. But what came next? The raids, the federal surveillance, the RICO allegations from Lil Rod. Those escalated this into a criminal battlefield. And the biggest bombshell? The suggestion that some of the most suspicious deaths tied to Diddy's orbit. Kim Porter, Andre Harrell, and yes, even Whitney Houston, may not have been coincidences. If even a sliver of that is true, we're no longer talking about lawsuits. We're talking homicide investigations. And while the law can look the other way on a lot of things in Hollywood, murder isn't one of them. There's no expiration date, no deadline. If investigators find cause, evidence, or even enough credible testimony to reopen those deaths, Diddy could be facing life behind bars. And here's where it gets even messier. Because he wasn't acting alone. Every operation needs infrastructure. And Diddy's alleged empire of abuse, manipulation, and silence didn't flourish in a vacuum. It was protected, shielded by industry titans like Clive Davis. Clive isn't just a powerful music executive. He's the music executive, the man who built careers and buried scandals, the man who kept artists on stage while their lives fell apart behind closed doors. If Diddy goes down, investigators will look at who enabled him, who protected him, and who benefited from the silence. And Clive Davis's name is at the top of that list. What Cassie started, what Lil Rod fueled, has triggered a domino effect. The feds are watching. Whistleblowers are talking. People once too scared to speak are now lining up with attorneys and NDAs in hand, ready to break them if immunity's on the table. And that leverage Cassie has is not just a moral victory. It's a warning. This isn't just about a settlement. It's about survival. For Diddy, for Clive, and for an entire era of music that may finally have to answer for the lives it destroyed in the shadows.